genealogies. And for that cause, guess what they did? They said Jesus was born of virgin birth. And Joseph and Mary didn't have no sexual relationship. God just say, come on, Jesus, and you born. That don't make sense. It don't make sense to me. What it meant was there was a Essene brotherhood. And Mary and Joseph was a part of the Essene brotherhood. The Essene brotherhood was those that was living according to the word of God. And when Jesus was born, he was untouched. The virgin is pure and has been untouched. Because when you begin to look at that book that I told you about, you will see that Jesus was walking one day. And there was a sister that looked real fine, just like you. And when she was walking, Jesus got caught up. See, because Jesus had to go through all the ways of life too, just like Drew Ali. He got caught up because of the music and the beauty of this sister. And Jesus said, man, let me go and get myself together. So all of us have to go through all the ways of life. We all have certain characters in us. And we got to get these things out of us to be able to be one with our Father God Allah. Islam. In this electrified age, men are racing into this life without complete knowledge of where they're going or what the end will be. When riches seem to be their only pursuit, to be obtained at any way and at any cost. When selfishness, avarice, greed, and lust dominate their very being. When humanity in general is left at the mercy of those who have no mercy in them. It is truly wonderful and astounding to see one come into this mad human drama for the sole purpose of serving humanity, losing all sight on those things worldly and yielding absolutely to a cause that has ever yet been obtained. This likeness is in the form of our holy prophet, noble Drew Ali, who is serving humanity. At this time, I like to recite the Morsham Markham prayer because the old folks used to tell me that prayer changes things. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. First of all, I'd like to rise, walking in Jerusalem, just like John, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible, the one who stretcheth forth the heaven with his hands, who have described with his fingers the courses of the stars, who set it bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and said to the stormy winds, be still. I'd like to give honor to the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star, talking about none other than our holy and illustrious prophet, noble Drew Ali. I'd like to give honor to prophet noble Drew Ali because it was he who reached down into the watery grave of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harmed and set me back upright on my feet again. I'd like to give honor to the forerunner to the prophet noble Drew Ali, Marcus Moses Garvey. I'd like to give honor to brother Marcus Garvey because this brother had to have pure thoughts in order to pave the way for love. I'd like to give honor to all Morsham Markers here, there, and everywhere that's doing anything to uplifting falling humanity and teaching those things that is necessary to make our members better citizens. I'd like to give honor to our two flags, the flag of our origin and the flag of our birth. And honor to our charter with its 10 great wonders and mysteries that gives us the right to function in these United States and throughout the world without molestation or ridicule of any kind. I'd like to give honor to all sheiks and sheikas. I'd like to give honor to all friends of distinction. Moreover, I'd like to give honor to all of those that have and will aid and assist us in this, our divine and gigantic mission, the uplifting of fallen humanity. Now, I'd like to give honor to effort, because so many of us don't even try. We would like to give honor to Open Signal here for giving the Moorish Voice the opportunity, this platform, to come to you and talk to you about the last prophet in these days, Noble Drew Ali, because Noble Drew Ali brought us nationality. The title of the day is Civil Rights. So in this civil rights, we will talk about human rights, because civil rights is a non-political issue. It's not even an issue that you could take to the UN, because when you call yourself Negro, when you call yourself colored, and when you call yourself black, you are outside of the Constitution of the United States. You have no rights that a citizen is bound to respect, because these names was given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and last until 1865 during the time of slavery. Noble Drew Ali talked about earthly and he talked about divine salvation. And when you understand our authority, when Drew Ali went and got it in 1928 and 29, the Vatican got theirs. So at this time, I want to read from the Moorish Holy Quran, the book of the seven seals that they talk about in Revelations, that none was able to open and read from its sacred pages the messages of purity and love. They talked about Jesus when he was 18 years old. And you talk no more about him until he was 33. Those 18 years that's missing in your Holy Bible is in this Moorish Quran. Now, when you begin to talk about Noble Drew Ali in the Moorish Holy Quran, chapter 45, 46, 47, and 48, and page 3 is what Noble Drew Ali brought us. He said that the Muslims of India, Egypt, and Palestine had these secrets and kept them back from the outside world. But when the time was appointed by Allah, they loosened the keys and freed these secrets. And for the first time, this book was delivered into the hands of the Muslims here in America. And if Allah would not have sent Noble Drew Ali, as far as religion is concerned, we would have been through. We would have been through because they came out with a book called Unto Thee I Grant. And they came out with a book called the Quran Gospel. And in those books, you'll find some here because they are talking about Jesus. But I can't talk about Bruce Lee. I can't even talk about Hitler from a perspective. I could talk about Jesus because Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah in the house of David, looking just like me. So what I want to do right now, I want to read from the Moorish Holy Quran. And I want to read from the Moorish Holy Quran, and the prophet said none was able to open and read from the sacred pages. And if you're not into that spirit, you ain't going to understand what Drew Ali is talking about. So the chapter I want to read from this evening is from one verse. And the title of the chapter is Holy Instruction from the Prophet, the Soul of Man. And whenever you read the Moorish Holy Quran, there's a caption at the top of it. And the caption say the Holy Instruction from the Prophet, the Soul of Man. So when you're looking into this chapter, whatever the lesson is inside this chapter is talking about the soul of man. And I want to read from one verse this evening. And the verse that I want to read from is verse 24. Verse 24, page 47. And it reads on this wise: God her, for she is rash. Restrain her, for she is irregular. Corrupt her, for she is outrageous. More supple is she than water, more flexible than wax, more yielding than air is there aught that can bind her. So now that we're talking about the soul, it's said in this verse, guard her, for she is rash. Restrain her, for she is irregular. Who is he talking about? He can't be talking about the woman, because the title of the chapter is the soul of man. So when he say guard her, for she is rash, he's talking about your soul. Now when we begin to talk about the soul, we know that the soul is the ether of the spirit plane, vibrating not so past. So when you pass this earthly form, see, the soul and the spirit is going to pass away. What lives on is the spirit, because man is not the body nor the soul. He's a spirit and a part of Allah. And we meet Allah in the spirit of truth. So we want to talk about the spirit of truth now, because it's not in flesh to think, and it's not in bones to reason. It is not this flesh that does my thinking. And a lot of us in this era of time, when we're taking on some concepts of another nation, we always talk about, I'm going through this and I'm going through that. But the flesh don't have nothing to do with that. It's your mind. It is your mind. This is where you overcome the foes of life, dealing with your mind. That's why I know what you Ali told us, through carnal thoughts and words and deeds. Man tore himself away from Allah. He debased himself. So we talking about every day about reparation, and we're talking about unity. Everybody want to talk about unity, but before you could come in unity with man, you first must come in unity with God. And how do you become one with God or in unity with God? If you call yourself a so-called Jew, then you got to honor the 5 books of Moses. If you say that you are a Christian, you got to honor when you say you're a Christian, then that means you got to honor the fruits of the Spirit. You got to live by the fruits of the Spirit. And when you say you're a Muslim, you got to live according to the Kalima Shahada. You said Ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah, saying that these 5 principles is what get you close to God. And if you are not living according to those 5 principles, then you're not in unity with God. You have separated yourself from God. So before you can come in unity with me, or before I can come in unity with you, I first must come in unity with God. That's why a brother was telling me yesterday, we was at a meeting, and he was talking about nominating or voting someone for a particular spirit, a particular position. And he said that church and state don't mix. And I'm diametrically opposed to that, because if I'm going to give somebody my vote, and I'm going to vote for somebody to represent us as a people, and I'm talking about, when I say people, I'm talking about the Constitution of the United States. If I'm going to vote for somebody that's going to honor that, then they got to have the principle of God in it. Because if he don't have the principle of God in him, no telling what he might do. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. This is what is known as 101 questions. And Noble Drew Ali gave us 101 questions. And he asked us in question 96, it says, who made the devil? And we was taught that the devil is somebody that have horns on their head. And I'm going to show you something. In this book that I written something down. And I written something down that says Elohim. That's create O him. So if Elohim made the devil, how did he make the devil? He made the devil in thought. Thought is the cause of everything. You meet God in the spirit of truth, and you meet the devil in the thought. Because we got to be understanding that it says that many are called and few are chosen, and some are sent. So just because one say that he is close to God, you got to watch his words, you got to watch his works, and you got to watch his deeds, and that's how he become close to God. Now, you heard a brother in the Christian church. He was a AMM, and he said that the Church of God in Christ ain't right. How can you say that? Because he had the same literature that you have. If I have the Moorish Holy Quran, and you have the Moorish Holy Quran too, and we're both trying to live a more and clean life, I can't say nothing about you. I can't say nothing about you until I look at you and see that you going contrary to what the books say. Because we have a blueprint that Noble Drew Ali gave us. And with this blueprint, it's a yardstick. And with this yardstick, you can measure if you're doing the right thing or if you're doing the wrong thing. So it say, who made the devil? And it say Elohim. And it say, if Elohim made the devil, what is Elohim going to do about making the devil? He's going to have to unmake the devil. And how do he unmake the devil? He unmake the devil in his thoughts, because thoughts the cause of it all. When you do devilish things, when you don't live according to the word of God, then you are the devil. You are Lucifer. You are Satan. Because when you talk about Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and the beast, look up those attributes. One of them is scheming. One of them is conniving. One of them is envy. One of them is jealousy. One of them is that lustful spirit. And if you carry those spirits, then you one with Satan. Now we say, who made you Allah? And it say, man is a spirit and a part of Allah. Yes, you are a spirit and a part of Allah. But what spirit are you? Are you human spirit? Are you carnal spirit? Are you divine spirit? Are you Holy Spirit, or are you lustful spirit? You are spirit because it's not in flesh to think and it's not in bones to reason, but what spirit actuate and direct your flesh? And this is what I want to talk about this evening. I want to talk about this evening because Noble Ali gave it to me to talk about. But before I get into that side of it, I want to talk about this reparation, because I've been listening to everybody all week long talk about the reparation and talking about we need reparation. But reparation for who? How can you go to the government and say you want reparation? Because we got your grandmother's a Negro, your mother's a colored, you black, and your children is Afro-Americans. So how can you get reparation? Because when you're dealing with reparation, you're dealing with nationality. Because man derives his name from the earthland. Everybody on this geographical earth, Allah gave you a particular place on earth. And there's no place for Negro. There's no place for color. There's no place for black. And even the Negro River that was in West Africa, that part is in Brazil now. So we want to try to live a moral, and we want to try to live a clean life. But when we begin to talk about reparation, the first thing you have to do is proclaim your nationality. Because whenever you talk to those that call themselves Ethiopia, the first thing they tell you, the slave trade did not come through Ethiopia. We did not come through the slave trade. That has nothing to do with us. And there's a lot of other people that in Africa say the same thing, because the slave trade came through West Africa. Whenever those of African descent who is here in America, whenever you go down there and check out your DNA and check out, well, from which you come, it's going to take you back to Spain, or it's going to take you to West Africa. Because when you begin to say Spain, you got to understand that it was us. We went into Spain. We gave Europe civilization. We gave them running water. We showed them how to take baths. And at that time, we was Muslim. This was before the advent of slavery. And when we did that, we were saying, Allah Baha, Muhammad al-Rasulullah, bearing witness there's no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the last and the seal of the prophet. But in this era of time, this is a new era of time now. And all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali the prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Now, we was in the holy day at our temple Friday, and we was talking about Ruth, and we was talking about the Moabites. And if you put a T on truth, Ruth, you get the absolute truth. But what we're talking about, when you begin to talk about Ruth being a Moabite, and from the east comes all light, then you see that those who call themselves Ruth, those who call themselves David, those who call themselves Solomon, they done took our birthright, they done took my Jesus, buried him in Vatican Square, took on our name. Now they got Jesus looking like Charleston Heston and Ricky Nelson. And something is wrong with that. And we are perpetrating that idea. We run now. I'm mad. A lot of people mad with me. They're mad with me, and they think I'm crazy. And the reason why they're mad with me and they think I'm crazy, because I won't accept that the virgin birth that you was told about. You say that Jesus was born of virgin birth. And you say that Mary and Joseph had a sexual, didn't have to have a sexual relationship, and Jesus was born. And that don't make sense to me. That's ludicrous. That's unintelligent. Somebody told you that. And those who don't treat you right, they are not going to teach you right. That don't make sense to me. That's ludicrous. But I do know that nowhere in the church, every time I talk to people in the church, I say, man, who is Anna? They can't tell me who Anna is. I say, well, who is Anna's husband? Who is Jesus' father or Jesus' grandfather? They can't tell me because that part was kept away from you. So now let's talk about Anna's husband. Anna's husband, I want to reiterate this because I got to pound it in until it become a part of every part. Jesus' mother name was Mary. And Mary was married to this brother. This was a bad dude, myself. He was a bad dude. And what made him bad, see, he was a legend. See, I want to talk to you about Jesus' father, grandfather, because he was a legend. Because all these dudes, they're supposed to be ex-gangsters, they've been in jail and everything, they call people legends that rape little brothers up in the joint. Every day they with the gumps and they with this and they doing everything, robbing people, killing people, faking like they're a part of Jew Ali and they not. And we call these people legends. The legend I'm getting ready to talk about is a different kind of legend. And the legend I'm getting ready to talk about is a legend named Jacqueline. Because they had two pillars in Solomon's temple. And they say the two pillars in Solomon's temple was Jacqueline and Boaz. Jacqueline was Jesus' grandfather. Jacqueline was Jesus' grandfather married to Anna. And when you begin to study the history of Jacqueline, and when you begin to study the history of Anna, you begin to see why Jesus was not born of virgin birth, but on another plane he was, because the virgin is one that has been untouched. You know, he said, man, that girl is a virgin over there. He said, man, I want to get her, man, because sometimes, man, you go somewhere else and you just be swimming. But if you get a virgin, then you ain't going to be swimming that much. It's jive all right. But a virgin means one who have been untouched. And Jesus was born of virgin birth because Jesus was untouched. His father was a righteous man. His grandfather was a righteous man. His mother was a righteous woman. His grandmother was a righteous woman. So Jesus came through an uncursed vessel. He didn't come through a vessel of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms, which are the attributes of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. So when he was born of virgin birth. I remember what took place when he was 12 years old, when he had his first birthday party, what he said he wanted to do. So this is what Noble Drew Ali did. Noble Drew Ali came, and he had to bring us two things. Whenever a prophet ever came to this earth, he had to bring the people one thing. And that one thing that he brought the people was their religion. He brought a religion because through religion, it said, why was religion instituted? To warn man of his weaknesses and to show him that from heaven alone is he the hope for good. Now we're talking about heaven, but Allah never made a heaven for man. He never made a hell. We are creators and make our own. So seek to stop seeking for a heaven within the sky. Just open up the windows of your heart, and like a flood of light, a heaven will come in and bring you a boundless joy. So this is what Jesus did. So when Noble Drew Ali came, because when you talk about Jesus and when you talk about Noble Drew Ali, both come through the house of David, they are of the same spirit. It say try the spirit. It say test the spirit. And it say see are you from the same spirit. When you talk about Jesus, when you talk about Muhammad, when you talk about Buddha, and when you talk about Confucius, you're talking about the same creative spirit, because whenever a nation is in need for a prophet, Allah will send one. What kind of God would Allah be? We done lost our nationality. We came through the Middle Passage. We fell through slavery, and we have somebody else's mind. We're not clothed in our right mind. Somebody done gave us another mind. So we minding somebody else's business instead of our own. Because every nation has their own customs, their own culture, their own heritages, and their own traditions. And we running around talking about, man, the so-called doing this and so, but yeah, but you accept Christmas. You supposed to be somebody that's conscious. You got a master's degree and you have a PhD, and you keep telling the children that somebody came down the chimney, bought them a present when you struggle hard, and what you doing is, my mother did that to me. She did it to me. She gave me Thanksgiving. She gave me Easter. She gave me all these different things. And Christmas time, I already knew what my present was because I knew her stash over there. And we went in there and seen the stash and seen what we already had. And sometimes if you get extra money, I go back. My sister stole my money. You know, I said, give my money back. I seen my present over there. But I'm talking to you now about Jesus. And Jesus being born of virgin birth. And Jesus being born in Bethlehem of Judah in the house of David. And Allah sent Jesus to this earth. And why? To save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, who was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. Then I looked in the book. And when I looked in the book, they were talking about civil rights. And it says civil rights is a non-political issue. They said civil rights is not even an issue that you can take to the United Nations. I remember Malcolm. My brother Malcolm. Malcolm went to the UN. And he would talk to the Secretary General, you thought. And he said, you thought, we're going to bring the United States before the World Court and charge genocide because of what they are doing to us as a people. And he said, yeah, Malcolm, you one of the baddest brothers around, and I like what you're saying. But who do you represent? He said, I represent the black man. He said, come on, Malcolm, you're a little more intelligent than that. You know, and at your age, you know good and well ain't no such thing as a black man. Because when I went to school, if you call somebody black, they're going to kill you. They're going to whip you. They're going to take you over there in Myron Street after you come out of school, and y'all going to rumble. Because ain't no such thing. Black is derogatory. Because we're what our forefathers were. And through the advent of slavery, Noble Ali told us that this free national republic of the United States, he told us that. But in order to be a citizen of this government, you must proclaim your nationality. And that's what he told Malcolm. He said, we already have a representative for the United States. Who do you represent? What nation do you represent? He said, well, let me get on the agenda. If I can't get on the agenda as Afro-American, let me get on as Afro-American, being I can't get on as black. He said, come on, Malcolm. You ain't heard nobody else. You ain't never heard no European say that he's a European American. He said, I'm a German, I'm a Dutch, I'm a French, I'm a Portuguese, etc. Because there's a particular geographical location, and then each geographical location have an ether in it. When we begin to talk about the slave trade, when we begin to talk about the Berlin Conference, when we begin to talk about what we have been through, each nation played a different part. Each nation took a particular part of Africa and they grew from it. See, that's why I talk all the time about Marcus Garvey and that red, black, and green flag, and when he went over to Liberia, and they wouldn't let him in because they had worked with the Europeans and they had Firestone ties, and that's where the paper come from. So Noble Ali is the last prophet in these days and time. Now, I can understand in the days of Jesus. They talking about Jesus is a prophet. I know you look at him as being crazy, but whenever a nation is in need for a prophet, Allah will send one. Now, the empty barrel make the most noise. But if somebody tell you that they come from God and they telling you that you Negro and that you colored and that you black, then you have no rights that a citizen is bound to respect. We talked about the Dred Scott decision. But when you talk about the Dred Scott decision, what brought about the Dred Scott decision? Not only slavery, you got to talk about the Kansas-Nebraska Act. You got to talk about the Missouri Compromise. You have to talk about the Louisiana Purchase. See, these are things that Noble Drew Ali taught us so we'll know who we are and who our forefathers were. Now, I was in a meeting this morning. And in the meeting this morning, it was told to me, it don't make a difference if you call yourself the national side or if you call yourself to go down to court and get your paperwork that we are all Moors. I don't have no problem with that because my intelligence take me there. But you are Moor because we are all Moors. We're who our forefathers were. But you're not Moorish under the Moorish Science Temple of America. Because when you say that you are Moorish and that you honor and follow Noble Drew Ali, then you know there ain't no such thing as a national side. Because Noble Drew Ali brought us two flags. He brought us national and national descent. And our national name, if you say you with the national side, then that means that you don't honor the Moorish flag. because the Moorish flag is the national descent flag. The American flag is your national flag. So if you say you with the national side, you just American citizen. You don't have nothing to do with Drew Ali. And everybody claiming that flag that Noble Drew Ali bought. But you got to understand that Noble Drew Ali of 1913 bought us that red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. He went and got us and retrieved that flag and brought it back to us, because that flag was flying here in the United States when it wasn't even being flown in Morocco. Can't nobody talk about King David. Can't nobody talk about Solomon. Can't nobody talk about Boaz. And I mentioned Boaz. Let me talk about Boaz too. He one of the pillars. So Ruth and Boaz was hooked up. Because see, they say that the Moabites was a nothing people. I agree with that. I was nothing man, and I did everything that was diametrically opposed to what God said. But Ruth was in the field. And this brother Boaz, who had a lot of paper, he looked over there and said, man, who's that fine Moabite girl over there? So he pulled her, and they got hooked up, and they got married. And from that union, because we were doing everything that meant, see, you know when they say the widow's son, they're talking about the woman has become a widow. And the woman become a widow because the man is dead. They say our women right now are widows. And they say because the man is dead. When you call yourself Negro, colored, and black, you are outside of the constitutional fold. You are not honoring your father and your mother. You are dead. So the Moabites was dead because we were worshiping the golden calf and everything else. So what took place was, being that we was a dead people, Ruth married Boaz. And man, I seen a lot of people with that. I thought about Jesse. I thought about King David. I talked about Solomon. And these was brothers that got in tune with the Spirit of God and hooked us back up with the family of nations of the spiritual perspective. So this is what Ruth did. So we was no longer dead. See, because when you are not living according to the word of God, you are dead. We was able to walk on water then. And when we say King David, and when we say Solomon, let's look at this again, because I reiterate it all the time because our minds don't open up. When they were talking about the Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life, of whom shall I be afraid? Or when they say the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He's making me to lie down in green pastures. Green is growth, the same growth that's in that flag. But when they was talking about the Lord, they were not talking about Jesus. Because you have to understand, in our book, it said man and woman is the Lord of the plane of things made manifest. But we gave up our birthrights just to gratify our lower self. So now when we begin to talk about the Lord, we are the Lord. I remember Matthew there used to call us Lord when we become certain elevations in our signs. And now when they talking about the Lord, they talking about God. The Lord is my shepherd. God leaves up. See? So Jesus was first of all the race to be transmuted into the image of God. So he was the Lord. He was the governor. He was the ruler. And this is what we must have to look at. We have a number 7. Everybody want to know what the 7 means. 7 is a number of perfection. We are all striving to reach perfection. There's a brother named Khalid Muhammad that passed on, real dog-hued brother, was in the Nation of Islam. He got a video out now. And when he looked at this video that he had out, he said that Noble Drew Ali told the Moors that they was Asiatic. Well, I agree with that. Because when I study my literature, not read, but when I study my literature, I see that the whole world was called Asia. And the whole world was called Asia, and then this is why Noah had an ark. And Noah's ark rested in Mount Ararat. That's the Asiatic. See, you have an Asiatic Turkey and you have a European Turkey. Now, when the word European came in, because European wasn't even in existence at one time. That's why in the Bible, it talked about the 7 churches that was in Asia. And the reason why it talked about the 7 churches that was in Asia, because at that time, Europe was not even in existence. So when you find somebody that's living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, when you find somebody that's living according to the fruits of the Spirit, when you find somebody that's living according to the Kalima Shahada, I bet you see peacefulness in their character. And the reason why that is because they're striving to reach perfection with God. When you talk about Muhammad, when you talk about Buddha, when you talk about Confucius, when you talk about Jew Ali, you're talking about the seven, because seven is the number of perfection. And we're all striving to reach perfection. And how do you do that? By live according to your understanding that was given to you by Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, or Confucius. So now, when you begin to talk, you talk about continental drift, or you talking about the Pangea. And when you talk about the continental drift, or when you talk about Pangea, then what you're talking about is land masses. And you'll find out that those that call themselves Asiatic, that's everybody in the East and us, Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, the only people that don't call themselves Asiatic is those that you call white. And if you call somebody white, it's disrespectful to them, because it say, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earth land which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. So when you meet a person, you got to call them by who they are, and not who they want you to think they are, but who they are. You know, the Kennedys and the Reagans, they is Irishmen. And this is when they get together on Irish holidays, St. Patrick's Day. They got the leprechaun and they got all green on, and they out there with the green beer drinking, representing their father and their mother. And we do the same thing. We represent their holiday, but we don't represent ours. We get involved. Another thing, brother come to the temple, a sister come to the temple, and you say, you know, I'm 5 minutes late, or I'm a half hour late, or I'm 20 minutes late. But I bet when you have to go down that courthouse, you got to go down there and see Mr. Man. I bet you ain't late for down there. Why? Because you give more respect to Rome than you do. Drew Ali taught a lesson. And he was telling the Moors that when he was on the scene, he said when you look at the people ready to come in the temple, it was the Japanese and the Chinese that was on the front row. All the Moors come in like you do when you go in the club. You want to come in last and be the last one to come in the club so people can see your outfit. And then you tell them I'm with God. You ain't got to tell nobody. You ain't got to pray loud, because prayer is silent anyway. It's silent meditation. Jesus sat by a flowing spring, and it was on a holy day. That's why I say every day is a holy day for a holy man. Friday is the day on which man was formed in flesh, but you got to live this thing every day. You can't do it sometime. You got to do it all the time. And it makes you feel so good. That's why people don't understand why people don't come out the house, why they're always in. What you coming out for? You paying all that money for your mortgage or your rent, and you rip and run the street. Why? Because you don't know who you are. And when you don't know who you are, you might do anything. Because I'm just learning who I am. I was talking to a brother this morning, Graham Bey. I'd like to give honor to Lowry Bey too. These brothers have come up with me. And I was telling Graham Bey this morning when I was talking to him on the telephone about serving two masters, you know, and about the Spirit of God. Because we was talking about you have a lot of brothers and a lot of sisters running around and saying that this brother or this sister need to come over here and read the Quran along with us. And if you don't come and read the Quran along with us, then you're not a true Moorish American. And that's so ludicrous, it's so crazy. It don't even sound right. Because Noble Drew Ali told the Moors in this book here, he said that the Moorish Science Temple of America was changed from a civic organization to a religious organization, and it said November, and it said what year in our literature. So when you find somebody that go around and say they're on the national side of the movement, or they're on this side of the movement, or you go down to court and get some paperwork side of the movement, what you're doing your own thing. You're not doing what Drew Ali said. Drew Ali ain't been gone that long. We know his wife, we know the people around him, and the people that taught a lot of us was taught by Noble Drew Ali himself. I was reading the other day, I had a brother Thompson Bey. He just had an operation on his feet. I had Thompson Bey in Holy Day last week to read the minutes of the first convention in October 1928. And when you read a copy of the convention in 1928, it was talking about how the chairman was talking about how the spirit was in the temple and how they was in their higher self and how they was talking about getting close to God. They weren't talking about no paperwork. Now we got a brother Manyweather, the minister of the church, and the brother that comes on the show. We work together. We talking about doing some things. We talking about doing a whole lot of things. And we talking about uplifting fallen humanity. Noble Drew Ali said some of his greatest followers are in the church. If that's what he told us. So when you see a brother or sister in the church, no matter where you see him at, because he told me if I go to a church, then that church can become a temple. So instead of telling them that you wrong and you ain't got this, talk about character. Talk about love. See, we have to learn to love instead of hate. I remember Matthew Zeal. Matthew Zeal, we call him Abaduck. He put a lot of work in. And he had us to form an organization in Preparation Center number 7, Lewisburg, because there was a lot of young brothers was coming inside those places, and those older guys was taking advantage of them. You know, I remember the day when they say, you want some coffee? And they give you a pack of coffee. Then they come back 7 days later, say, man, let me get that coffee off of you. And you say, I don't have the coffee, but I can go to the store and get you some more coffee. I want that same coffee. And if you don't give me that same coffee, then something gonna happen. And these same dudes that I talk to sometimes, they call all these dudes legends. Them dudes chumps, man. They not legends. They not doing what God say do. But because they done took you in the room and did something to you and you got a wife at home, then you gonna give these dudes honor. They don't deserve honor. They don't deserve honor. That's why all them dudes, I wouldn't even let them function in the more scientific than them, John. You can say what you want, but check the record. they weren't even able because you couldn't do certain things with the same opposite sex and the same sex. I wouldn't allow that. Certain things I wouldn't allow. But you had all them chumps around that took sides because they had already gave themselves to them dudes. So what we have to do, we have to learn that you can't serve two masters at the same time. How do I know? Because I experienced that. And if you say that you love God, if you say that you love Allah, if you say that you love Jehovah, those people that's doing things diametrically opposed to what they say, what you doing with them? You can't serve two masters at the same time. Now, we're talking about the war of Armageddon. And everybody keeps looking for the war of Armageddon, but the war of Armageddon is within you. The war of Armageddon is the war against truth and falsehood. See, when you begin to talk about overcoming some things, see, you got the spirit, you got the soul, and you got the flesh. Now, the soul is the ether of the spirit plane, so that's the yellow. Like when you drive down the street, you got a red light, a green light, the yellow light. That yellow is the caution. So now we're trying to overcome some things. We're trying to overcome some of the foes of our life that is hard to let go, just like in the book. It talks about Jesus. And it said that they put the tomb, a big stone at the tomb of Jesus. But it said Jesus became so strong in his convictions, he took that big mighty stone as though it were a pebble and cast it to the side. So this is what we have to do on the plane of soul. Now you wrestling on the plane of soul. What am I wrestling with on the plane of soul? I'm wrestling with cigarette smoking. I don't smoke. I'm just using this as a parable. Say that you try to stop smoking cigarettes. You let it go on the physical plane. You ain't picking it up on the physical plane, but you're wrestling with it on the plane of soul. Soul is the caution where the yellow is, and you're wrestling with it. Two things gonna happen. You can go back to the spirit, the physical with it, or you can go all the way to the spirit with it. And when you go to the spirit with it, then you have conquered that foe. They say, can man become fruition on the plane of things made manifest? Yes, man could come fruition. But once you become fruition in a particular lesson, then you got to move on to another lesson to become fruition in it. Man can overcome what he wants. I told you, I used to say the devil made me do it. That chump called me one day and said, come here, man. He grabbed me in my collar. He said, chump, let me tell you something. I called you and you came. Stop giving me the beat saying I made you do something. You using me for your weaknesses. Just say that you're the weak dude. I called you and you came. You didn't have the strength. Everybody, Drew Ali said, many are called and a few are chosen. Everybody can't do this work. This thing is rough. You know, to give your life a willing sacrifice, to talk about God every day, to try to raise people up. out of darkness and into the light. See, when you talk about the lower self, you talking about your dark self. When you talking about your high self, you talking about your light self. See, because you got the dark and you got the light. And when you begin to talk about the dark, see, the dark is your carnal self. Your body of desires is a reflection of your higher self distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. Now, I have something else I wrote down. Let's go back to this, the Chinese. Because when we talk about Abraham had a wife named Sarah. And Sarah couldn't have children at the time. So he had a handmaid named Hagar, the Egyptian. And the Egyptian had a son. Hagar and Abraham had a son, the Egyptian girl. And they had a son, the son's name is Ishmael. Ishmael is the father of the Arabian nation. So now I'm looking at the Arabian nation today. And when I look at the Arabian nation, I'm looking at the seed. I don't see the seed of Abraham right there. I don't see it. And why don't I see it? I don't see it because of the Berlin Conference. When you begin to talk about the Berlin Conference, it just don't sit when the European nations went there to divide Africa up. When you begin to talk about the Berlin Conference, look at Morocco today. When you look at Morocco today, I am not in Morocco. The Moroccan Empire is in the United States, because when you look in Morocco, you see Spanish-speaking people over there, and you see French-speaking people there. And if Allah would not have put that spirit in Noble Drew Ali, then right now Morocco will be gone, because that flag will not be there. The brother that raised us, the first brother that come out of the institutions was in 1956. German Bey left the grand body of C. Kirkland Bey. We're going to get into this one day, because talking to Brother Graham Bey today and a lot of other brothers, they change with the weather. One minute they're over here, the next minute they're over there. But I looked at the back. I told him this morning, I looked at the back of my questionnaire. Noble Drew Ali gave everybody one of these. Noble Drew Ali gave every member, when you get your 101 questions, you have on the back your law, your authority. And when he give you the authority, he talked about Millie Hill, he talked about Small Bay, he talked about Lovett Bay, and he talked about Former Bay. Now you say that they are slave names. They're not slave names, they're European names. But the reason why he did that was because we are talking today about reparation. And if we're talking about reparation, when your name is on the list and you know you're going to get that paper, if you have Bay or Ill with that European name, you're going to get your proper. But if you say my name is Yusuf Muhammad, they don't know from which you come. Because through the slave trade. See, because Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius. Let's start right here with Muhammad. Muhammad had some caliphs. He had like Umar, Omar, Abu Bakr. He had these brothers with him. And before Muhammad got the revelation from God, these same brothers had those same names that they have. Right here in the studio, we have some Christian brothers that have a TV show. They are from Arabia, and one of the brothers' name is Yusuf Muhammad. And I said, man, what you doing with that name? He said, because I am an Arabian. These are Arabian names. Everybody in Arabia is not Muslim. Everybody in Arabia is not Christian. So here in the Moorish Science Temple, we talking about the Moorish voice. When we say Moorish voice, we're talking about of an African people. We're talking about the voice of an African people. And the only voice I have is telling you about your nationality. Man derives his name from the earthland. You have to proclaim your nationality. The big thing is, everybody has one except you and me. Everybody on this top side planet mud has a nationality other than you and me. Like I say, when I come up, I was a Negro, I was colored, I was black, I was Afro-American, and I'm whatever they call me. And Drew Ali was right there in 1913 saying, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality. And we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now. And all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained noble Jew Ali the prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. I met a sister over the weekend, and she was telling me that they study here in Portland. This is not the national side, this is some other kind of side. And they study mostly the Constitution. They study mostly the Constitution of the United States. And that's good, because we was told about that, because this is our free national republic. Our national name is American. And we're part of this government because we proclaim our nationality and we can trace ourselves back. You know, this first White House was not in Washington, D.C., where I'm from. The first White House was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Brother Hopkins Bey, father, I met him, and his family every year, they be at down there at the hall and telling you about your nationality. And see, this is where George Washington said, I must not tell a lie. I chopped down the cherry tree. And this is where we was cut off from being a nation of people. Later on, it was moved to Washington, D.C. And see, at one time, the White House wasn't always white. It might have been red. So these are lessons that we need to look at so we can learn some things, because Drew Ali say 2 hours in an up-to-date library. But if we begin to go into the courthouse, you go down to the courthouse and say, Drew Ali's wife didn't do that. Noble Drew Ali didn't do that. You don't have to go down there. You taking all these people money. You took a lot of my little brother's money up here in Portland. Took all that money and you put it in your bank account, or you did something else with it, when you know that if the Moorish Science Temple of America is here, then there's no need to go down to the courthouse, because they had a guy by the name of Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass supposed to had the Freeman's Bureau for us to come in. And when we come in, we can come in and proclaim our nationality and get our 40 acres and a mule. But they bought him off. They bought him off with a European woman and $100, and he did not do what he supposed to had done. If he would have done that, then there would have been no need for Noble Drew Ali. So all you have to do is come in the Moorish Science Temple, because I've seen Drew Ali's wife's nationality card, and it looked just like mine. I've seen all those people with him had a nationality card, looked just like mine. And some of them, I seen Cook Bay, the one that Drew Ali took his fez off and put on his head. I seen his nationality card. It looked just like mine. I seen a brother that's in the hospital right now, real sick. People talk about him, but he did more work than people that I know. His brother I love here. I seen his nationality card. It looked just like mine. See? So now we don't need a nationality card. All we got to do is go down to the courthouse and get a big seal, and then we all right. Drew Ali said, I've suffered much and severely in the past through misunderstanding of what the movement was dedicated to. It is the great God Allah alone that guides the destiny of this divine and national movement. I know that all true American citizens are identified by national and national decent name in order to answer and apply to the free national constitution of this free national republic of the United States of America. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali is going to help this national government. For without a free national name with the decent flag of your forefathers, there is not a national divine title of the government in which you live. Yes, we have many stripes. I remember, man, when I was in the temple, especially back in the 70s, the Panthers was there. And I remember German Bay, I called him. He said, you see what just happened to the Move brothers and sisters up there in Philadelphia? He said, this is why Noble Drew Ali taught us the way that he did and told us not to even carry a pocket knife. Because right now, he said, these Europeans will crush us. He said, but by us proclaiming our nationality, becoming citizens of this government, it gives us the opportunity to raise our people up. And I look at brothers every day. They on social media, got swords in their hand, and like you don't kill nothing, you ain't gonna let them die. I remember, man, I was in the preparation centers, and a brother had got stabbed up. And I walked over and wanted to pick him up and help him to the hospital. Guy Harris had enough wisdom to do that later on, but I didn't. And the reason why I couldn't pick him up and take him to the infirmary, because if I'd have done that and he would have lived, then I would have got hurt myself, because I'm involved in somebody else's business. And most of my life, I've been living that kind of life. You know, I'm trying to serve two masters at the same time. But what I want to do, I want to walk with God. I want to do what God say do. I want to live a moral and clean life. Man, I done so many things. But by me studying duality now, because inside them places I couldn't study duality because there was so much foolishness going on, I had to deal with that. So I'm always honored to be able to come before our Portland listening audience. And I was honored to be able to drive with the Buffalo Soldiers, Brewster Shaw and them yesterday in our Good in the Hood. And I look forward to trying to put something together to be a benefit in this community here, because this is my home. So may Allah continue to bless all of us in our love to each other. So in conclusion, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, because this is the source from which Moorish Americans draw their strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Drew Ali came for me. He had me on his mind. And I'm so glad he came for me. I'm so glad he came for me. And I'm so glad he came for me.